Hello, and welcome to the Catching the Octopus podcast. Here, we will explore how connecting inward gives us an advantage outward. We openly talk about the obstacles and challenges and difficulties that life throws our way and how they become moments of gratitude and things that can benefit us when we look back on our lives. I'm your host, Naomi Hurley, and it is my mission to bring you top quality guests that will share with you openly their obstacles and also the techniques they use to go inward that strengthens the way that they serve themselves and others at the highest level. Thank you for joining. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. Today we have Adam Hill. Now, Adam Hill is a CEO, speaker, author, leadership coach. He's a best-selling author. He's internationally speaking, and he's in that peak performance coach space, helping people to rise above anxiety and realize their ultimate potential in business, fitness, and fulfillment. After overcoming alcoholism and unhealthy habits, Adam has reframed his anxiety disorder into a superpower, becoming a top amateur triathlete and an inspiration to thousands. And when he's not running an 100-year-old family business, speaking, coaching, or chasing new levels of achievement, chances are he's wearing a Speedo in front of a camera, attempting to create humorous media content. Now, whether or not he's successful with that, I suppose you can be the judge. But welcome, Adam, and thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Naomi. This is such an honor, and I am so impressed by everything that you're doing here. And yeah, thank you for helping me on my trajectory to international speaking on that front, because I've spoken at your summits and in Australia, and thank you for that opportunity.
No worries. And I think just a bit of history of Adam and I. Adam and I met at a Tony Robbins event, but what I wanted to really emphasize on that is you don't know who you're going to run into and where you're going to run into them, right? And what will happen from that. So we were part of it was Business Mastery, and we were part of this business group that had to put together a business plan and go from there. And then we've just stayed in contact and sort of supported each other in our careers.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, to that point, just surrounding yourself with the right type of people and making connections with anyone, learning about them, being curious is such a powerful tool to have. And that's really it. We just met by chance. We happened to be put into the same group. Yep. And I know that it leveled up. I know we've learned so much from one another, and I've gotten so much from you, so much support, so many opportunities, the opportunity to speak. And it's been incredible. And so I would encourage, the first, nugget that we'll drop here is that anybody out there, you should be finding those communities, not neglecting an opportunity to connect with people, learn more about them, and learn how you could serve them. Because that may turn into a relationship that will level up your lifestyle and theirs.
Yeah. And what Adam has given me is, when he started his Flow of Fear podcast, which you should go and check out, by the way, it's awesome. He actually invited me to be a guest, and that gave me my trajectory on starting this podcast. So you just don't know how you're going to touch people, right, when you come into contact with them.
Yeah. Well, and I'm so glad you did, because you have such a podcast mentality. When you have such a strong voice and a strong message that it's going to help a lot of people, and you just don't know how. Yeah. And that's what I've learned from podcasting is that it's just incredible connecting the stories and learning the stories and connecting those stories with people. It's just, I never knew that I would love it that much. I really didn't. I thought, I grew up an introvert. So I spent the first 30 years of my life avoiding people. Yeah. I really did, because I thought that's what introversion meant. I thought introversion meant like I had to, avoid people and avoid social situations and all of that. But what I learned over the last 10 years, especially, which was really my period of growth, happened within the last 10 years. Yeah. I learned that that introversion that I have, that feeling of introversion is actually a bit of a superpower, because it means I'm more selective. So if you feel like you're an introvert, you can actually have more meaningful connections with the right people, because you are more attuned to it. You're more attuned to what you're looking for. And that's what I found. So first 30 years of my life, didn't really pay attention to relationships. Now that I have, it's leveled up. Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose from knowing your story, reading your book, Shifting Gears, and listening to your podcast and the stories you tell, there was quite a space where you kind of avoided it and went to the wrong space, wasn't it? Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I did, I went down a pretty dark path early in my life. I didn't really, growing up with an anxiety disorder. And I think that's really what was part of our foundation to my social anxiety. But that anxiety really led me in my early college days to really use drinking as a crutch. I mean, the first time I drank alcohol, which was just before college, uh, I I immediately felt the solution to my problems. I mean, it melted my fears away. I was able to be more social, and it made me more of who I wanted to be at that time.
Mm.
And so, not having any like history of alcoholism or addiction or anything like that in our family, I had no indication that it would become a problem for me. And I was being in college, it's like, a lot of people are drinking, and it's kind of socially accepted. And I didn't really have the education on what mental health issues were at that time. So it was just that I started drinking every weekend, and there wasn't problems at first. But then
Mm.
slowly and gradually, because it's an insidious disease, I started to have small problems. Like I would, start to black out on occasion, or I would start to like wander down the street and get stopped by the police, or,
Mm.
occasionally just get into a little bit of trouble. And, but by that time I was also having a lot of panic attacks. Um, that's how my anxiety developed in that time. And it's probably no coincidence that, the heavy drinking and the lifestyle that I was living, smoking and not eating healthy, Lucky Charms for dinner, that kind
Yeah.
of thing, was contributing to panic attacks and this, unhealthy lifestyle. But I started using alcohol more as a crutch, the more problems I had.
Yeah.
And then it led into just it led into a decade of problem drinking that was basically a vicious cycle of crippling fear while trying to make it through the days, and numbing myself with alcohol by night. A lot of times, getting into trouble.
Yeah. And that really resonates with me because the clients I see in that RTT space or the therapy space that I do, usually what they're coming to me for is something that was helpful at some point in their life. Right. So even our worst
Mm,
habits, even the things we really want to change about ourselves the most, had a purpose at some point. But then there comes a point
yeah.
where it no longer is helpful, right? And you experience that as well.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it came from this idea that, yeah, it was, for me, it was not the idea that I was leaning more into something that was a bad habit, because that of course was bad, but
Yeah.
it was more so that I was suppressing something that was deep and living within me, which was
Mm.
fear, anxiety, my mental health issues that I just didn't know about. I wasn't getting to the root of them, because the ism part of it, the alcoholism, there's all sorts of isms out there,
Yeah.
alcoholism, uh, you know, uh, 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 all different kinds of isms, gambling addictions,
Yeah.
sex addictions, everything like that. It's all suppressing that one ism, which is the root of what is leading us to our behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was that anxiety, that fear, that panic, that irrational panic that was deep down that I had to work through. And it took a
Yeah.
lot of therapy to do that.
Mm.
And, a year of, and it took, going into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, which I believe is an international organization. So if
Yes, it
anybody doesn't
is.
know what
We've got
that
it here.
is,
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, it's but it really, that really helped me to recover from alcoholism, or the alcohol part of it, and work on the ism along with therapy. And I've been with my therapist for 12 years. That helped me to really finally discover and get to build a relationship with my fear. And that's an important concept, because by healing, I didn't, I didn't end my fear. I didn't end my anxiety. I still live with it today. And
Mm.
that's the thing. That's the important thing people need to realize, is that by, by, by fighting it, by fighting fear, you are suppressing it. You're pushing it down. You're digging into unhealthy habits in order to control it. But once you rise up to face it, that's where healing starts. And when you face it, it's not fighting it anymore. It's just acknowledging it as part of the human existence. Acknowledging it as you're going to live with it. And so I learned to live with it and find some harmony with it. Not that it's pleasant, not that it's comfortable, but nothing worth doing is comfortable. So
I can agree with that, right? Like that's kind of how life goes. And 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 I think, everyone needs suffering to open their eyes to things, right? It's a place where we actually have an opportunity to go within. And yeah, it's not pleasant, but if we can harness it the right way, we can come out the other end of it in real positive situations. And I mean, I've seen how many people you help now through your public speaking, in your keynotes and your podcast and your book. And just, that way, I love that way that you actually approach the fear as kind of a superpower in itself, when you can embrace that. And that's why your podcast is called Flow Over Fear, obviously. Can you tell us a little bit more how that ended up becoming probably a part of gratitude that you had for that part of yourself?
Absolutely. So that first step in building a relationship with fear, it's that going from fighting it to facing it. But then there's that next step, which is the elevating, like turning it into a superpower. That's where we embrace it. And I believe that, once I went through that healing, and the healing is a very important piece. You don't want to overstep the healing. I mean, there's a lot of folks out there, including myself, before I ever got sober. I looked at things like these impulsive desires, like finding like six-pack abs or financial freedom, all of these little buzzwords that were these impulsive desires. They were superficial. And so I went right for that, but I overstepped the healing phase. It's like that's where we kind of build our why. And so having had a year of sobriety, having had some healing there, I then kind of looked at that as a point of reference for me, that I could achieve things that I once thought were impossible, because I never thought it was possible for me to get sober. I mean, when I got sober, and this is another important part of healing, is that sometimes in order to embrace that healing, in order to get out of hopelessness, we first have to feel hopeless, like absolutely hopeless. And this is that weird paradox. And it's hard for people because it can be so traumatic or painful in that series of, I was sitting in a jail cell after my sobriety date came a day after I got into a DUI accident. And it was an accident that I caused. Unfortunately, nobody was hurt. But and so when I was in that jail cell, I was the most hopeless I'd ever been. I didn't think that there was any possible way out for me. But I still took that one step forward, and thank God I stepped into healing. And when I reflect on the last, 11 years of sobriety, I look at all of the miracles that happened after that point that I said things were hopeless. That's what I want to shout for the rooftops, because that's the thing that's going to change people's lives when they're in that state. Is, that hopelessness is not the end, that there is hope beyond hopelessness. And so with a year of sobriety, I look back on my life and that year of sobriety and said, that was something I never thought that I could do. I achieved something impossible. And that led me into this desire to pursue more in my life. And like, what else can I change? What else can I pursue? And that's what led me into that Ironman, looking or trying to achieve the Ironman, because I hadn't focused on my physical health at that time. So I wanted to pursue something more physically.
And it wasn't just the Ironman that you did. I mean, you went and you trained for that, and that would have been a process in itself. But then you took yourself off to actual Kona as well, and you went and went the next level, didn't you? So you've kind of stepped up from that place of, I need to achieve something that's impossible, and then you're like, oh, there's a level up. I'm going to jump for that. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So so when I had a year of sobriety, at about a year of sobriety, I was recovering from a shoulder surgery. And this was that moment where, like, I'd been told all throughout my first year of sobriety, within AA, I went every single day to a meeting. And in that year, I constantly heard, don't make any major life changes your first year in sobriety. Don't make any major life changes your first year in sobriety. And when I heard that, I internalized that saying like, okay, well, when I hit a year of sobriety, I need to make a major life change. That's what they're telling me to do.
That's an
That's like my
achiever.
A-type. Yeah, that's my
Love
A-type
it.
trying to like get through. And so what I did when I was, I was recovering from shoulder surgery because I was prone to aggressive fits of I need to get my shit together. I need to like, start exercising and doing stuff like that. And I would always burn out. I would always like just, go really hard, really fast, and then I would burn out. And that's what would frustrate me is like, I can't stay consistent with this because I keep getting injured or burned out.
Mm.
So I was laying on the couch eating peanut M&Ms, and I was thinking about like my life, my year of sobriety, and everything else I wanted to achieve, and physical health. And it made me think of the Ironman triathlon. And the reason it did was because 7 years prior, when I was still in the midst of my alcoholism, I watched the Ironman World Championship on television for the first time. And when I saw it, I was so inspired when I saw like the sweeping views of Hawaii and the athletes swimming, biking, and running in dramatic cinematic slow motion. And it just inspired me. And I was just like, whoa, what if I could do something like that? And then the second that thought came up, this dream was born and excitement rose up in me. And then fear rose up to meet it.
Yeah.
And when those two met each other, my brain verbalized the fear with lies. And it said, like, you can't do that. That's not you. Look at you. You're not an Iron Man. Are you kidding me? Why don't you go back to drinking beer and feeling sorry for yourself? And so I listened to my brain on that day.
Yeah.
Before I got sober. But many years later, when I had that year of sobriety, I thought back on that moment because the conditions were right for it. And I was ready. And the seed that was planted many years earlier came back up. And the excitement rose up again. And the fear rose up again to meet it.
Yeah.
And the second that happened, my brain verbalized it with, oh shit. It was like a eureka and nope moment. And so instead of saying instead of telling myself the garbage lies that I told myself before, I mean, my brain still tried to do that, but I overruled my brain. And I said, well, now I can try because I have this point of reference. And so I decided that I didn't want to just do an Ironman. I wanted to qualify for the race that I saw on television. And so I researched it. I Googled how to train for an Ironman, and I looked up how to do it. And I realized that you would have to be a top 1% triathlete in order to qualify for that race.
Yep.
And so instead of getting dejected and giving up, I just decided to try and just see what would happen if I gave 100% to something, like 100% commitment, and did everything everybody else said, because that's how I got sober. I just did what everybody else who had more experience than me told me to do.
Yeah.
And listened to mentors and started working in that direction. So I did the very same thing. I looked at who had a lot of success. I found Mark Allen, who was a triathlete in the 80s and 90s.
Yep.
And I found out that he adopted a unique training protocol, which I apply now to everything in life. Because what I learned there was that every way that I've been training for fitness was wrong. This idea that I was giving 110%, trying to go hard or go home, were sold on all of this sexy stuff.
Yeah.
But one thing I realized was that the way he was training and the way he was promoting something called the Maffetone method, which was about like 80% effort over an extended period of time.
Yeah.
And you can achieve great results. And so I implemented that strategy, and it went really, really slow at the beginning. And it just felt painfully slow, slower than we think we're supposed to go. But over the next year, by the next year, I finished my first Ironman in the top 30% of the field because I consistently gave 80% and rejected the urge to go 110%.
That is just awesome. And I get that, the slow burn. And I think people expect, we see someone that's achieved things and they're like, oh, they're an overnight success. But it's like, no, they're a 10-year overnight success, right? So we get this hype around us that things can just happen like that. And they can when the timing's right, but we've got to put in the hard yards behind it, and have that faith and trust in ourselves. So, I'm sure there was a lot of times where you had to go within in that space to find that inner self to motivate you. Would that be the case?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there were so many times where I was like wanting to give up and all that kind of stuff. And it was just like, it was demoralizing, but it came back to that one step at a time. And all of this was from internal motivation at the very beginning, because I was embarrassed to tell anyone about it. I mean, I think that's one thing that I promote when we talked about it at the beginning was this idea that, finding that right community that supports that supports us, that has what we want, that we can lean into. But the one thing that challenged me at that time was, I wasn't a triathlete. I'd never ridden a road bike before. I'd never really swam any distance in a pool. So I didn't feel like I had any business being a triathlete, right? So
Yep.
I was kind of just keeping it a secret for the first few months until I could have a proof of concept in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked up to my first triathlon, which was a sprint triathlon in Carlsbad. And I finally did the race and I achieved it. And that was kind of like my, okay, I think there's something here kind of moment. And then I started finding the communities but it is really hard in that instance to find those communities, and getting that internal motivation is really difficult. It takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of just passion to continue pursuing it. And I was fortunate that I had the year of sobriety, because that just opened up my world to what I could achieve. And a lot of that too is also accepting that okay, I want to qualify for the Ironman World Championship, but I'm not rushing it. I don't have to achieve it this year. Right. Because then that makes me impatient, but I was accepting of my results. I accepted the fact that I was running a 15-minute mile to start and was okay with that. And that's it. So part of that is faith. I have a framework for how we dream. And you have the impulsive dream, which really is superficial. It doesn't have a lot of meaning behind it.
Yeah.
But a compelling dream has 3 C's that I call them.
Yeah.
It's convicted, it's courageous, and it's clear. And this is how we find a dream that we know that we can pursue with passion, because it's convicted, meaning we have the right combination of commitment, faith, and boldness. We have courage, which means it's just far enough past our comfort zone so that it makes us a little afraid, and we have to embrace fear to get there. And it's clear, meaning we know exactly what success looks like. So that's what I try to adopt with that 3 C's dream. And that helps to stay disciplined and get fulfilled about something, and be less likely to give up.
I actually love that. Convicted, courageous, and clear. And I think if we all look back on times where we have set out to achieve something and we've achieved it, I'm sure every one of us would go, oh, yeah, actually, that's exactly what I did, without actually having that realization. Right. Yeah.
Right. So now the goal is then, let's not distract ourselves with the impulsive stuff. Let's not look at the 6-pack abs or the financial freedoms, but let's find the actual dreams that fill us up, that have those 3 C's, and focus on those. That's how we get to world championships. That's how we do it. People ask me oh, well, you're a genetic wonder. You did, blah. I'm not. I've never played sports in my life. I've barely played sports in my life. This is just how you stay. This is a framework for discipline. That's how you do it.
And I think people miss that mark. It is about that focus and that discipline, and while also staying true to who we are. And just to recap and say, top 1% of people get into Kona. And if you go onto YouTube and you do a search, you can actually see a video clip of Adam's journey to Kona, which there's some seriousness in it, but he's a lighthearted kind of guy, right? So it's really entertaining to watch. And you wouldn't think, looking at that, oh, this guy's in the top 1%, because you just seem to approach life with that philosophy of, I'm just going to give it what I've got and wait for it to give me back.
If you're enjoying this podcast and you want Naomi or any of her guests featured on your podcast or as a keynote speaker at your next event, you'll find their contact details included in the show notes. If you'd like to learn more about how you can work with Naomi individually or as part of your strategy to improve leadership in your business, then review the courses, offers and services at getupandgroconsulting.com.au.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's Bill Gates says that you can achieve. We overestimate what we can achieve in a year, right? We underestimate what we can achieve in 10 years.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my feeling about like, okay, well then, don't make the pie in the sky 1 year goals, like say by the end of 2023, or these New Year's resolutions or things like that, where we're saying, I'm gonna, achieve this huge result within 1 year. No, be realistic about the short-term goals.
Yeah.
But then dream really freaking big for 10 years. Like,
Yeah.
so my goal was like, okay, within 10 years, I'll be in the Ironman World Championship. Well, we underestimate what we achieve in 10 years. So it took me 4 years to qualify for the Ironman World Championship.
It's awesome.
So in January of 2013, I was not a triathlete. I was devouring endless amounts of peanut M&Ms, and I was smoking cigarettes with a year's sobriety. And 4 years later, my life was completely transformed again for the second time. Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's hard sometimes because, I've done some Tony Robbins events, and after them came out all inspired and motivated. And my 1 year goal, I mean, those people that were around when I started my journey in this business and where I'm wanting to go, they all knew my 1 year goal, right? It was a lilac Lamborghini in the driveway, right? That was it. I'm going to put it out there, and didn't get anywhere close. But what I didn't realize is that 1 year was more about who I needed to become, less about what I was going to get. And I think now, every day is a step closer. I've actually changed that goal now, because my head is a bit clearer on what I actually want to achieve, and it's turned more into that. How can I actually be the best of who I am, knowing that then I'm going to achieve those other things that'll come. Those things that are meant for me.
Yeah, and that's so valuable too, because you look back at that lilac Lamborghini, and you're wondering like, well, is that an impulsive desire, or what is it? Because like, I look at the Ironman, and I look at the Ironman World Championship as, when I achieved it, like working up to it, was an amazing transformative experience. And then when I achieved that goal, like that was my lilac Lamborghini sitting in the driveway. When I achieved it, I had this euphoric moment of pure joy that lasted like 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And then
exactly.
I was like, where's the pizza?
Yeah.
Because we have these ideas that like, we're going to change our lives forever. And there's no question we transform, but that hedonic adaptation happens immediately when those achievements occur, and we're already on to whatever's next. And so that's the whole point of it. I mean, as cliche as it sounds, the juice is all in the journey. And if we're not enjoying that process, if the process, I mean, there's a million ways you can get a lilac Lamborghini, but it's like, how do you know which way to go to get that, 15 seconds of euphoria, right? You got it. And that's.
Yeah. And I think as we grow, and even it shows in our leadership as well. So just tying it back to that. But I know for me, I was speaking with someone just yesterday about it. And they're going, how's your lilac Lamborghini going? And I went, you know what? I've changed my mind. I think I'm going to hire one for a day and have a photo shoot. Right. So I can experience it, because like you said, that's what's going to happen. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to take it for a drive. I'm going to be mint. And then in a week later, it's going to be dusty and I'm not going to want to wash it. Right. Let's be honest. That's what life does. So if I can just hire one for the day, get some photos in it, go for a drive, get the thrill, and then I can actually just keep being me. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have the same feeling about private airplanes. I would love a private. Every time I walk into an airport and I have to go through security, like, gosh, I wish I had a private jet. I wish I had a private jet. It's like, okay, but you can also rent them. You don't have to buy them,
Yeah.
And, by the way, I'm nowhere near getting a private jet, either renting it or buying it. So,
well, as soon as you do, you have to come over for a visit, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
Bring the family over. So with, obstacles that we have in our life often present themselves. And at the time, like you said, you're in that suffering and you're in that hopelessness. But I believe that every part of our life, good or bad, sets us up for something. There's some element of a gift to unwrap in there. What do you think the gift was for you from all of those years of suffering? And I know you've spoken of some achievements, but I'm probably speaking more from within. What was the biggest gift you got out of that, do you think?
Yeah, it's always, it took me a long time to think of it as a gift, but there's a lot of gratitude I have for every single thing that's happened to me throughout my suffering, throughout what I had. because it has shaped me into the person I am today. I would have never realized like what we can achieve if we're not going through it. And I would have never like looked at the challenges that I have now as opportunities. You know, I mean, I'll say something kind of controversial here. I mean, I see a lot of complaints happening in the world right now, a lot of it. And, I get it coming from, somebody like me and where I'm at now. It's like, okay, well, that's a place of privilege and I get that. But the complaints that I'm hearing have a lot of, it's just like an element of like, okay, but that happens to a lot of us and we can choose the perspective that we take into that.
Yeah.
And for me, it was the fact that I spent all of my life for 30 years being a victim to fear and pushing it down, fighting it, and just spinning my wheels and suffering so much meant that I got to learn how to build a relationship with it and learn how it can empower me. So I never have to be a victim again, regardless of what happens to me.
Yeah.
I don't have to be a victim to it anymore.
Yeah.
There's an opportunity to rise above it. And if I am a victim to it, I'm choosing it.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Yep.
definitely. And so how, I'm interested to see the relationship that has now with you as a leader. You're a CEO in a 100-year-old family business, which I think is amazing, by the way. I think it was just your birthday not long ago, I saw on social. So
Yeah.
And in your
We look
podcast,
great for our age, don't
congratulations.
we?
Yeah, you do.
Right.
You're looking fab. Must be all those triathletes, right? Triathlons,
Right.
getting your body right. But how does this then come through, and how do you use this to actually be that effective leader? How does it come through in your leadership?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the more challenging things I've done. I mean, it's running a legacy business. We're 100 years old, and so there's a lot of culture in that. And I have, I have a very high growth mentality now. It's like I've seen what we can achieve as human beings. I've experienced growth in my own life, and I've seen that, and I know what our company can achieve. But there's also a balance there. There's a reason we've made it to 100 years old as a company. It's because of conservative, growth and development. So, there's a balance there. There's a harmony that exists there, and it's a healthy tension that exists where it's like I'm, wanting to pull it, and it's it's gradually coming, but it's not this aggressive or risky growth that we're getting into. So the way it shows up for me as a leader is I try to inspire empowerment in everybody. I want to encourage and inspire growth and help people to realize their ultimate potential if they can and if they want it. So there's a bit of a, it's like, well, there's a lot of like that going into my personal life, which is a lot of the podcasting and all of that, speaking and things that related to my own life and the business of like, where's the overlap? But I think that what we do in our lives and how we grow, how we develop can influence the ways that we show up in our jobs or our careers or, what we want to bring to the world. So.
Yeah. And I could only imagine the difference in, we're all leaders in some way, shape or form, I believe, but the leader that Adam, in alcoholism would have shown up like, and the leader that Adam today would have shown up like, but the leader of Adam today couldn't have existed without the leader of Adam in alcoholism. Right. So it's a quite a relationship, isn't it?
Right. Absolutely. And that's why, for people that might have gone through something in the past or going through it now, shame is a common emotion, a common feeling we feel. And that's my away from emotion. That's the thing I try to fight off the most is the feeling of shame.
Yeah.
And I felt my fair share of it in my life. But the thing is we feel shame when we don't like the person that we or the behaviors that we have or how we've affected other people. But the thing is we are capable of incredible transformation all the time. Yeah. And I had somebody, in my podcast recently, Joanna Lohman, who's a professional soccer player, who said that she's like, we are capable of infinite transformation. And it's so true. And when we do that, who we are, where we've come from, can help us to grow. So I think that the person who I was yeah, I couldn't have run this business.
Mm.
And, maybe the person I am can't do the things that I'm going to do 20 years from now, or the people
Yeah.
that you are right now, or whoever is, can't do the things that they want to do 20 years from now. But we're building on that. And that doesn't mean that we can't. And there's going to be a lot of imposter syndrome that comes into that. There still is with me.
Yes.
But the beauty of life and where we truly get to the experience of joy is that continuous growth. That's why achievement doesn't really do it for us.
Yeah.
It's the journey.
Yeah. I heard this this story once, which I thought was really good. And it was like, you've got this big mountain in front of you and you're there ready to climb it. And the opportunity comes that you can jump in a helicopter and get on the top and look at the view. So you go, yeah, choosing that, right? So you get in the helicopter and you get there and it's like, oh, nice view, versus slogging it, cutting your knee, falling over, stumbling, getting to the top and going, wow, what a view. It's just a different element, isn't it, of appreciation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, it's about the stories we get to tell on the journey to the top. And, it's like kind of like not to fault it in any way, but there's less difficult or less challenging ways to get into Ironman Hawaii than qualifying, right? I mean, there's things that money can do to influence that decision, but but I just don't think they're as rewarding as the ways of getting in the way that I did. That's true of any kind of thing. You look at lottery winners, people who win the lottery. It's 15 seconds of pure joy followed by years of hell as they're dealing with the outcomes of that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think when we can actually, I think that's the importance of going within, that I've found, especially on this last part of my journey and all of my life, I suppose, is when I'm actually going within and I'm coming from that place in my leadership, in my life, in my parenting, in my friendships. If I stumble, I stumble, but and I accept that and I'm okay with that, because I know that it's just come from who I am. And it's not about trying to be something I'm not anymore, which is when I was in the corporate world, that was my mask. I used to go to work, put my mask on. Okay, what does people need to see? What do they need to have? And I would deliver that. Whereas now it's kind of like, hello, out of the closet kind of thing, here I am. And I feel like I'm serving people at a higher level coming from that space.
Yeah. And you are. I mean, it's anytime we could show up more authentically. And I mean, in that terms of just like how we can authentically be loving in the world and share our message, is the better we, the more fulfilled we become, but the more the world benefits from us. And that requires, kind of bringing it full circle on that, it requires that we rise above fear, that we embrace it.
Yeah.
Because it's not always easy. I desperately want to be a people pleaser. I mean, I am I don't want to be necessarily. I am a people pleaser. I don't like it, the feeling I get, again, going back to shame. I feel ashamed when other people are maybe offended by what I say, or don't like what I have to say, or don't like me.
Yeah.
But the thing is, being authentic is going to push some people away, but it's going to attract the right people.
Yeah.
And you're going to help the right people, and you're going to inspire the right people. When you try to please everybody, nobody's pleased. So I've tried to go by this philosophy now, to your point, which I think is beautiful, which is, instead of being a people pleaser, try to be a principles pleaser. Because when you please your principles, then the right people are pleased.
Yeah. I had one of my other guests, it wasn't on the podcast, but I saw a socials post from them, Jeff Stewart, and it said, if you want to please everyone, don't be a leader, sell ice cream. I'm like, oh, that's just great, right? Because that's the thing. Like you said, you can't please everyone. But sometimes as a leader as well, what I found is when you're actually doing something that displeases someone, that could be exactly what they need. And then later on, they see that as the gift that they needed. So it's having the courage to come into that space, like you said, come in from authenticity and do what you feel is the right thing for the community level, right? Not just avoiding things because we've got fear. It's rising above that, using it as a superpower and stepping in and saying, well, hang on, I'm here to serve, and this is the best way I can do it.
Yeah. And I think that's so powerful, because another point that we bring into it is this idea of optimism and being optimistic within our world. one of the things that shifted for me when I made my transformation from, within my first year of sobriety, and ultimately what got me to the point of being able to say yes to Ironman.
Yeah.
It was like this idea that, and what I take into leadership now is an unwavering optimism that's grounded in reality. I mean, optimism is, many people choose to adopt cynicism, and cynicism, and I think, is the opposite of optimism.
Yes. Yeah.
Cynicism is easy. It's lazy. And I hate to break it to people that like to feel cynical because they want to think that all people are bad and all situations are bad and nothing's going to work out. Well, the reason it's lazy is because you either get the satisfaction of being right, everything doesn't work out, or or you get to be pleasantly surprised when things do work out. So that is a lazy thing to say. But when you're an optimist, you're putting yourself at risk, but you're also putting the energy out there, and you're opening your mind, which means you're opening up the opportunities for luck to occur.
Yeah.
Like, you could say that for many people, like, oh, it's so lucky to have those opportunities in front of them. So lucky to have this. Well, is it luck, or is it really the fact that he was just open, that person was just really open-minded because of their optimism to opportunities for those situations to arise? If we're cynical, we never have those experiences happen to us because we're always closed off to them. There are blind spots at that point.
And then you can live in that world of poor me still, right? Because the opportunities don't come. And I love how you said that. I was speaking with someone a couple of months ago now, and we were just talking. I said, I am so lucky, like the opportunities I'm being presented, and coming on and doing podcasts, and my life just feels so blessed, and I feel so lucky. And they just said around and said, that's not luck. You've created this and you need to own it. And I was like, oh, that was a bit foreign, and I'm so used to putting it out there in that gratitude space that I know I need to sit back and actually go, hang on a minute, you've contributed to this. This is a part of how you show up. And I know in one of my forums, I think I said to you, what was the question again? I think it was, what's the thing that's inspired you the most? And you kind of come up and said, don't take this the wrong way, but me. I'm the one, my family's been great supporting me and all of these connections and your networks, but it's me that wakes up and shows up. And I really love that. That's always sat with me.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it's an arrogant statement to say, but really the only way, I mean, we can get motivated for a moment by, Tony Robbins or whomever can motivate us.
Yes.
And I know Tony Robbins hates being called a motivational speaker, but he is one. But anyway,
I kind of think so too. But anyway, maybe he will listen to this. If he is listening to this and you're upset, reach out. I'll have you on as a guest, Tony. Always happy to have you.
Right. Don't hurt me, please. No, but this whole idea, like, who inspires us? We have to inspire ourselves. We have to. I mean, that has to come from within, and that starts with things like optimism, being optimistic. Knowing that, for all the bad things that might be happening in the world, we are so much better off in this world for many, many reasons than we were 50 years ago, 100 years ago. We're constantly growing and expanding. And so that intrinsic motivation has to come from within, and we have to develop the systems and everything that we need to bring them out and to make ourselves inspired. And it takes a lot of work because I wake up every morning with anxiety. I do. Yeah. I mean, every day to this day, my anxiety hits me in the morning, and it's overwhelming. It's my brain just continuing to repeat things. And a lot of times it's saying, oh, you're a piece of shit. You're this, you're not doing that. You're not doing well enough here. You're not doing this. And that kind of stuff comes up. I have to actively work first thing in the morning and make it a priority to say, all right, I'm not going to let my brain control my outcomes today. I am going to work diligently to make this life a life worth living that inspires others to give their best and hopefully inspire others who might be feeling the same level of fear or anxiety or whatever, to know that they're worth it and that they can come up and build a life that will inspire others to lead an incredible life too.
Yeah, I love that. And I think some of this, the mindset that we have and the way we approach life can come from some of those practices that we do to come within. And everyone individually has their things that they do. You know, I meditate. If I'm not training in the morning, I'm meditating. I kind of do something for my mind or my body every morning. And then just those other places of gratitude and things like that we have. Do you have something that kind of is a daily practice that you go into to help that connection strengthen?
Yes. Every single morning I wake up, I have my morning method. And so I basically take 1 to 2 hours to myself every single morning to make sure that I'm primed and my mindset is where. And for me, and I think that everybody needs to adopt some kind of morning method so that they're not waking up and frantically heading out the door, grabbing a granola bar and then just getting on their day. Own your morning and you'll own the day. And I think everybody's different, whether if some people don't like meditation, I don't think I necessarily take to just sitting down quietly and meditating. But what I do is I start my day with breathing exercises. I start with Wim Hof breathing, and the Wim Hof has been powerful. It's been something that I've been doing since 2015. I will go right from that to doing some spiritual reading in the morning, like a Bible reading for me that I'll do. 5-minute journal is the next step. So I'll write in 3 points of gratitude, 3 points of, 3 things that I want to accomplish that day. And then, a couple of other affirmations that I have. And I'll get in front of the shower and I'll do some affirmations in the cold shower. And so a lot of people like to take a cold shower. They like to do affirmations. I like to do them both at the same time. It's habit stacking. So it makes it actually makes it helps me to kind of get over that fear too, because it's like every morning it doesn't get any easier to jump into a cold shower. In Colorado, the showers are really cold. But I'll jump in there and I'll do the affirmations just to basically tell my brain that you're not going to get the best of me today. And then do some exercise and start some reading and then start to get into my day. Yeah,
I love that. And I love how that is so uniquely you. You know, and I tell people, oh, you should meditate because it's really worked for me, but we've got to find what works for us. And I feel like what you're doing is a form of meditation. You know, journaling is that kind of inner reflection and that sitting there and allowing, if there's any messages or any words of wisdom that need to come down, they can come down in that journaling, right? So it's still a way of channeling that inner connection or that spirit connection. So really love that. Yeah. Well, I reckon we could keep going for another couple of hours, but I don't know if the guests are going to want to sit around hearing to us. Maybe we'll have to do this again sometime, right? But I'm
definitely open to it.
Yeah, great. It's been awesome having you. And if people want to find you, which I'm sure they're going to, how can they find Adam Hill? Where's the best place for them to reach out or find you?
So the best place to find me, I have everything on my website, which is adamcliffordhill.com. There you can find me for speaking events or how to book me for that, or my podcast, which is Flow Over Fear, and all of the Instagram handles. You can find me on Instagram too at the Adam C Hill, at these Adam C Hill. There's no .com on that. I'm a boomer. Don't worry.
That's all right. We're being authentic, right? That's what we're here to do. So
right.
and look, if you just for a laugh, right? I one of the things I remember most about Adam when we were in that business mastery is just he was just showing up and serving the group as a whole, not even just our small little business group. So he would just randomly come up and just chuck puns in the chat, right? So we're in this event and then there'd just be this pun would randomly come out and you're like, what is that? And I think that's another superpower he has. So if you think that you're punny, go and check him out and see how you compare. And every day, most days, if not every day on Facebook, he's come up with a really great pun. And you'll see a couple of videos on Insta as well, where he's in an event or he's doing something in his personal life and decides to give you a pun trip on the same time. So thank you, Adam. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. You're doing an awesome thing here and doing awesome work in the world. Keep it up.
Yeah, thank you. Well, when I'm surrounded by people like you, it's hard not to be awesome. So thank you very much. And
thank you.
I look forward at least to serving you in our next episode. Thank you. Thanks for joining in and listening to this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. It's been great having you here. And if you'd like to go and like and subscribe and maybe even leave a 5-star rating if you think it's worth it, I'd really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.